recommending, are you paying any attention to limiting fat, like avocados or coconut oil or anything like that?
No, that's a good question. I really pay no attention to really anything, and that's funny. So those of you who are watching that know body language, it's like I can, I will, I guess. So when a person has to constantly monitor that information, it's really a function of the type of foods they're eating. Because, for example, if you drink a liter of chocolate, you won't be able to drink alcohol, for example. If you drink alcohol, it will projectile vomit out your mouth. I mean, it's just impossible to put anything like that in your system.
Because your body is so upscale.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you, for example, dump chocolate bliss or any kind of superfoods on top of, a hamburger and fries and a shake,
right,
or a Coke or something, then you're going to have problems.
I've got an interesting scenario for you.
Okay.
So type 2 diabetes has had it for over 20 years, has been raw, like high vegan raw, for that same amount of time. Still takes insulin, but not very much, and has just started to play with taking chocolate bliss. She's been taking lots and lots of enzymes.
Cool.
And wants to be 100% off of insulin and hasn't made it there yet. She's thinking she's still got tummy weight, which seems kind of funny to have tummy weight when you've been raw for that long. That's what I was thinking. Is it fat? Too much fat intake? Or
my first question would be, is it our enzymes or somebody else's? Don't name a brand if it's somebody else's.
Both.
Okay, both.
Yours and others.
So what I would suggest is try the protocol exactly like I said it.
Okay.
Equal amounts of water, bliss and enzymes, water and enzymes, bliss and enzymes, until you go through 1 gallon.
Okay.
Make a gallon, and that's the only thing that goes in your mouth. No supplements, no medications unless they're essential.
Okay.
And here's the thing about medications. If you're on a bunch of stuff, you go to your doctor and say, why the heck am I taking this thing? And if they have no good answer, then the next question, well, first off, you ought to fire them and go to somebody competent.
Right.
And then the next question is, well, how do I get off it as fast as possible and stay comfortable? And you get off everything except things like there's some conditions that, like if somebody's had a heart valve replacement, they require to have a certain level of viscosity in their blood. So they'll take a certain substance that monitor, it's really weird technology.
But like a medication that's supposed to help their pancreas manage insulin, you would suggest go off.
Well, you have to be really careful. Yeah. So
one could experiment with.
No, I wouldn't say that either. I'd say if it's a non-life essential medication and you go to your doctor and you say, why am I taking it? In other words, you don't do anything unless you're doing it with your practitioner, because don't believe any raw food guru or anybody that says you should stop your medications. I hear people on audios and videos saying, well, superfoods will save you. You can go off superfoods. If you hear that from out of somebody's mouth, you better do a 180 and run.
Yeah.
And take everything they've got to say with an extra few grains of salt.
So it is possible to reverse diabetes with superfoods and enzymes and water intake.
That's our experience.
But do it with your doctor's support.
You do it with your doctor's support and do it based on your testing methodology that you have been taught by your practitioner. Because the reason your practitioner has taught you that is so you can manage your dis-ease. And what I'm suggesting is that your dis-ease can actually come forward and turn into ease.
Right.
And so that's the whole process. And just to be clear about medications, if you are on medications, especially multiple medications, only your practitioner knows how they're interacting. And you must work with your practitioner and in conjunction with what's called a compounding pharmacist, a pharmacist that can change dosages on a gram level. In other words, different than just buying capsules.
Right.
Right. So like People's Pharmacy here in town is really good about helping people get off of multiple medications. If you're on, some people are on 20 or 30, 40 pills, and there's no way to tell what's going on until you're off some of those. So you have to work with your practitioner and your compounding pharmacist, get off as much as you can, and then you go for whatever's left, the easiest one to make the biggest effect on your health, you go after getting rid of that one. Okay. And if you can't find a practitioner that can help you with that, you fire them, and you find somebody willing to do it.
All right, good. So next on your list is to add good quality salt to your diet.
Yep.
And part of the reason for that is that it allows you to hydrate and keep water in your system. How do you know how much salt is enough?
Oh, that's easy. You put it in your mouth.
Uh-huh.
And if your body says, yuck, then you've had
enough. And as long as your body, like straight into your mouth or mixed with water.
We just put it in salt shakers and use it on food.
Right.
And occasionally I'll put a pinch in water, and rarely.
So, what's the deal with all these doctors and others in the literature saying, oh, low salt diet, don't take salt, it's bad for you?
Well, it's interesting to notice that there's this cycle, and there are a lot of so-called doctors that do these newsletters and have radio shows, and superfood companies that are now joined on the bandwagon. And the way the marketing process works, it's classic online marketing through fear. Mm-hmm. And the way it works is you pick some random thing to cause controversy about, and the only point is not to provide anything useful information for anybody. It's to get people to forward your email to other people as much as possible, and it's like walking up to the beehive. You beat the beehive, and you run, and whoever's left around has to deal with the bees.
Right.
It's, less
than
desirable.
And so you think that's what's happened with salt?
Well, it differs. It's like this week it's agave.
Yeah.
And, next week it will be salt. And after that it will be cacao again. Mm-hmm. It used to be cacao. And then it'll be cacao, and then it'll be, something else like vanilla. I mean, somebody will randomly find something, some study someplace, and they'll make up some story.
Right.
Here's the way you solve all this in a single sentence.
Okay.
You pick your desired outcome. This is my desired outcome. I'd like to stay awake for this number of hours every day. I'd like to go to sleep fast, sleep hard and deep, wake up refreshed. I wake up, my eyes pop open, my feet are on the ground, I'm at 100% instantly.
And I'm off of insulin and able to manage my sugar perfectly.
Potentially, if that's a project for you, whatever your desired outcome is, I have no idea. You have to pick it, and then you only do those things that are aligned with your desired outcome. You listen to everybody and believe no one.
And follow your heart.
And you follow your heart and your experience. If you eat some particular brand of agave or cacao or mushrooms or tomatoes or straw, I choose whatever you're eating, if it is out of alignment, if you feel dissonance with your desired outcome, in other words, if you feel groggy, if your desired outcome is to have energy, or your sugar level goes up and your desired outcome is for it to go down in balance, then that's something you should stay away from.
Right.
And there is no way to say agave is bad.
Yeah.
That's like saying air is bad because there's...
Or tomatoes are bad because somebody had a bad tomato. It was spoiled.
There's stuff in the air. There's metals and chemicals in our air and water and food. So what are you going to say? Everything's bad? That's just ridiculous. So you pick your desired outcome. You only cleave, old, archaic word, you cleave to, you hold to only those activities in alignment with your desired outcome. Period.
Right. So, and listening to your suggested methods for a desired outcome of reversing diabetes. Mm-hmm. One of the things you suggest is adding BComplex for corrupt DNA.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's somewhat, especially for type 1 diabetes, because that's usually autoimmune related too, or there's an autoimmune component. And so anytime there's autoimmune or what we call pathological cancer, everybody gets cancer every day. Mm-hmm. To a certain degree. It's just most of us clean up those mutagenic or denatured cells, which is the way it's supposed to be. And so pathological cancer that requires, going to the witch doctors and getting the cure, the chemo and the surgery, that's DNA's gotten to a point where it's degenerating. And DNA is actually built out of B12. So the best way to really, the current research is starting to indicate that the best way ever to get cancer is to take a bunch of synthetic B12 supplements you get at your local downscale, convenience store. Right. They're selling like B12 shots with all these. Anyway, so if your DNA is made out of B12, I recommend that you just stick with something like the Nano, the BComplex, Max Stress, which Max Stress, I keep telling Dr. Bob, change the name, dude. Yeah. I just call it Nano BComplex. Yeah. So just use that. That's that's what I do. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
How about cleansing? I recently did an experiment of a week on the chem-free and metal-free cleanses.
Oh, cool.
And they hit. Wow, I could taste the metal in my mouth. And you describe a process of doing this where you kind of ramp up, taking one a day, and then graduating to even more, and taking the lecithin and the all-European with it, as well as other supplements to support my body processing those toxins out.
And make sure you're drinking plenty of water.
Yes, and lots of water because of all those toxins.
And also, a really good thing to do when you're doing that type of protocol is some kind of green juice with things like cilantro, or even eating salsa that's got some fresh cilantro.
Okay.
And also things that have a lot of vitamin C, especially camu.
Right.
Because one of the main things that gets liberated with those metal detoxes is even if a person's had mercury out of their teeth, if there's mercury embedded in their cells, that stuff will just liberate and start circulating, looking for a way out.
Wow.
And if there is no way out, there's no path, which mercury and all heavy metals, they're like people sitting in a theater. They have to have an usher come get them to take them, because it's a dark theater, right? To take them and lead them out of the theater. And so camu is the usher for mercury, for example. And that's the reason chem-free and metal-free works chem-free and metal-free works so well, is that they're all these ushers that sort of go in mass and assist all these. Out. You can think of these chemicals and metals as, they're like geriatric patients on a day pass or something in a theater. They got to have some assistance, you know. They got to have a little assistance to get out.
So, is there a way to do that cleanse that doesn't take so much time? Like, I found it required a lot of time because I was in a detox process for a week of being on it.
And when did you do that?
A couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Is it something that you could do like one night a week over a period of time?
You could do that. I always suggest people adjust whatever they're doing to their comfort level.
Right.
So you may have been okay with, kind of pressing up against your comfort level and doing what you were doing.
So take as many as feels good, and don't overdose on your detox.
Yeah. And start with one, and then maybe even wait a day and check your experience over a day with and a day without.
How critical do you think that is for someone with diabetes? How much do you think that might be contributing to the diabetes symptoms?
Type 2, probably not so much. Okay. Maybe type 1.
Okay. Because
I'd still, if a person was in a type 1 diabetic situation, I would recommend, if it was me, I go for comfort and ease at every turn.
Right.
And so I probably have a strong tendency to make sure that my blood sugar levels were balanced for a long time before I started going after deep embedded chemicals and metals.
Right.
So maybe after your blood sugar had been balanced for 6 months or so, then give some consideration.
Go after that. Okay.
Yeah, don't wait till your blood sugar is good one day and say, I'm going to go do some more heavy lifting.
Get some stability first.
Yeah, get some stability, let your body equalize.
Okay. Let's talk a little more about this whole agave thing.
Cool.
Because we saw all the press and all the news about, now agave is bad and it's just as bad as high fructose corn syrup, and we emailed you and like, we feel fine, what's the deal?
Well, it's a simple test. You take, make up, I almost said make up a batch of chocolate bliss with high fructose corn syrup. No. And agave, don't waste your chocolate bliss. Don't waste your chocolate bliss, but you can do an experiment. You can, make up some lemonade. There you go. And make one batch with vanilla agave, and make up another batch with high fructose corn syrup. And drink that high fructose corn syrup and see how you feel afterwards. No cheating by taking enzymes, though, because you won't feel it, because the enzymes will work on the well, it'll certainly lessen the person's experience.
So what makes your agave so different than some of the other agaves on the market?
That is a really good question. I think it's just the care that goes into the people that harvest it, because it's a very complicated process. And agave nectar is heated, and so if you heat it for too long and improperly, then you ruin it. And so I'm giving away a little bit of a trade secret here. The best way to get the best agave is you go find the most expensive tequila. It's about $600 to $800 per liter. You find out where it comes from. And then you figure out how to negotiate a deal with that company. Good luck.
Right.
To pull agave out of the process before it ferments and sell it.
Wow.
Because you've got to be able to convince them, give them a business model that makes them more money than if they process the whole thing into $600 to $800 liter of tequila.
You know, it's interesting that you say that though, because we tried an agave that came from another company, and it was marketed as it come from some tequila plant, some popular place in Mexico, name names,
cool.
And it did not taste nearly as good. And it's not just because there wasn't vanilla in it, because I added additional vanilla, and it's just there's a flavor.
Mm-hmm.
There's a flavor that yours has. It's so smooth.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because we did change sourcing about a year ago, and we tested we're a first, what's called a first tier import. In other words, we work through a customs broker to work directly with a manufacturer, because we bring agave in barrels by the truckload. Right. So when we get a barrel, that barrel is sealed with a stamp on it. We know it got sealed at the factory. When it gets to us, it's still sealed.
Right.
Most of the agave nectar that comes out of Mexico that's really good, by the time it gets into the hands of U.S. manufacturers, they mess it up. So,
just in their processing of
it. So a lot of the blame, you can't really say it's those South Americans down there are selling us inferior product.
Right.
No,
yeah, the plants are fine. It's how it's being processed.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. So we tested, and we had some that tasted like motor oil, some tasted like motor oil, some had burnt after taste. Some spiked my blood sugar 30 to 40% in half an hour.
Wow.
And of course, we did all sorts of testing, and we got it down to a few, and then we went and did research on how those are manufactured, and then did test shipments in larger quantities to make sure the same quality. Because a lot of times we'll get samples of really good stuff, and then we'll buy a big hunk of stuff,
right.
and it's no good.
Wow.
Which is really complicated too. So if you're going to get into the superfood business, you have to have a big reserve, because you have to be willing, if it's if quality is important to you, you've got to be willing to take a container load of stuff and scrap it.
Wow. I'm glad you're doing this and not me. Yeah.
Sometimes I wish somebody else would, and it's okay for now.
Thank you for stepping up to the plate.
You're welcome.